Good morning and welcome to Market Cafe, a show where we'll give you all the details which matters to you before opening bell. Let's get started with US markets. The Wall Street actually started the week on a muted note yesterday as investors turned cautious ahead of earnings and Fed commentary. The Dow Jones ended largely flat, managing to hold on to recent gains, while S&P 500 and Nasdaq both traded flat to positive note. Technology stocks saw some profit booking, while eyes now on the earnings later this week, which could set the tone for the week. If you talk about other commodities, we can see that even crude edged slightly higher. The crude ended at $65, and if you talk about the Brent, it has settled at $62. Now there is a hint of US-Iran impasse, which is pushing the crude oil higher. Similarly, if you talk about the gold, that has been steadying on the safe haven demand, and dollar index has also hit lowest level since May at. Let's also take a check how Asia is actually performing. There is a slightly positive start that you can see in Asia. Nikkei is trading around 0.5% higher. Similarly, if you talk about Hang Seng, Hang Seng is actually trading a bit higher, and yes, you can see on your screen around 1% high the rate there on Hang Seng. Similarly, Kospi, which is the only market which is trading lower currently in the Asia Pac. Shanghai is also trading higher on a flat to positive tone, but more importantly, you can see there on the screen Australian markets were 0.5% higher, but Nifty implied open is something to watch out for, which is indicating close to 100-point start for the Indian markets. So looks like a positive start at the opening of market today. But let's move on to events to watch, which will be on our radar. Eurozone consumer confidence is something which we'll watch out for. In Japan, loan prime rates is something which needs to be watched later in the day. If you talk about global earnings, Home Depot, Vodafone are the earnings which will be on our radar. Today, Q4 earnings of Hindalco is also something to be watched out for. In terms of corporate action, SBI as well as Torrent Pharma is meeting today. The board meet is there for fundraising. Remember, State Bank of India has already announced a fundraising in the equity front, but today on a debt basis, it will be decided what will be the fundraise. In terms of other events, Qatar Economic Forum that is opening today, and NVIDIA CEO Huang to speak at Computex Dubai. G7 finance ministers are also supposed to meet today, and it will also include central governors in Canada. Fed's Raphael Bostic and Mary Daly will also speak today later in the day, and that is something to be watched out for in terms of important event. But let's move on. There is a sombering news this morning. Israel continue its illegal offensive in Gaza, claiming 126 civilian lives. Israeli warplanes and drones have unleashed unprecedented attacks on hospitals and schools and across other civilian neighborhoods. As the Israel army expands its ground offensive, Israel leaders say they will allow limited amounts of humanitarian aid into the strip. But those in charge of relief say it's too late and too little. The leaders of Canada, France and UK threaten to take concrete action against Israel if it does not end its renewed offensive in Gaza, while 22 countries urge Israel to let aid into besieged enclave. Do remember, Israel's war on Gaza has claimed at least 53,339 Palestinians, wounded 1,21,034 according to Gaza's health ministry. The government media office updated the death toll to more than 61,700, saying thousands of people missing under the rubble are presumed dead. Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has in fact dismissed the calls and pledges to press on the offensive, which includes plan for Israel to take control of the whole Gaza, slamming the leaders of UK, France, Canada. Netanyahu called their joint statement a huge prize for Hamas. In a strongly worded post on X, Netanyahu reaffirmed Israel's commitment to achieving total victory against Hamas, aligning with US President Donald Trump's vision for resolving the conflict. Yemen's Iran-allied Houthis announced what they called maritime blockade on Israel's Hafia port in response to Israel's ongoing conflict in Gaza. In a televised address, group's spokesperson Yaha Sari said, and I quote, "All companies with ships present in or heading to this port are hereby notified that as of time of this announcement, the aforementioned port has been included in the list of targets." Shifting focus to markets, Moody's has now downgraded the long-term rating of top American lenders such as JP Morgan Chase, Bank of America and Wells Fargo. After pushing the US out ballooning $36 trillion debt, it also downgraded the long-term deposit ratings of Bank of America, JP Morgan and Wells Fargo AA2, and the earlier rating was AA1, and that has been cut long-term counterparty risk ratings of certain rated subsidiaries and branches of BNY and State Street to AA2 from AA1. White House Press Secretary Leavitt pointed to a recent investment announcement as a sign of economic confidence in the US when asked about the downgrade during a press conference. Let's listen into what he had to say.
Well, look, the president talked about this over the weekend. The Secretary of Treasury also talked about it. When you look at the world has confidence in the United States of America and our economy once again. The president just last week secured trillions of dollars in investments from countries in the Middle East. We have seen trillions of dollars of investments flowing into our economy since the president took office. That is because America or people around the world have confidence in the United States of America. And if you also just look at the raw economic data that we're seeing, last week when we were out of town, inflation dropped once again. Oil prices are dropping, gas prices are dropping. The president has added nearly 500,000 jobs to the American economy already. So there's a lot of optimism in this economy, and the president disagrees with that assessment.
Let's also listen into what our market expert Ajay Bagga has to say on Moody's downgrade on US credit rating.
The rating agencies lack credibility. The first rating agency downgraded US in 2011. What were the other two agencies doing for the last 15 years, 14 years? So S&P downgraded in 2011. Fitch followed in 2023, 12 years later. So either S&P was wrong or these two were wrong. And then Moody's has taken its own time. Last year, they said we are putting US on a negative watch, and this year now they have downgraded. So the market does not ascribe much credibility to the rating agencies.
Similarly, Swaminathan Iyer, consulting editor ET Now, has also explained why Moody's downgrading US sovereign debt from its AAA rating is a warning and not a crisis. Let's listen in.
I would say, what has happened is an event, but not a crisis. This is not the first time worries have been expressed. I mean, I would say at least for 5-6 years, certainly during the Biden era, enormous fears were expressed in Trump one and the Biden era as to, look at this rising US deficit. And it seemed that because for a long time, it seemed that this had no impact on debt indicators and so on, people began to say, let's just go ahead and spend. Let's have more tax cuts. And, the world needs the USA. The US has the deepest market. So, nothing will happen. As they say, nothing happens until it happens. And right now, what's happening is a definite feeling of unease.
Meanwhile, the JP Morgan Chase top boss Jamie Dimon has said that the market are too complacent on tariffs. He believes the risk of higher inflation and even stagflation aren't properly represented by stock market values which have staged a comeback from lows in April. Additionally, he also expects earnings estimate for the S&P 500 companies which have already declined in the first week of Trump's trade policies will fall further as companies pull out lower guidance, and that is happening amid the uncertainty which is prevailing around. Putting some numbers to it, he expects those projections to fall to 0% growth after starting the year at around 12%. Meanwhile, People's Bank of China has gone ahead and cut key lending rates by 10 basis points amid efforts to ramp up macro growth amid heightened trade tensions. The Chinese central bank has slashed one-year loan rate to 3% from 3.1% and the 5-year LPR to 3.5% from 3.6%, moved the market's first reduction in rates since PBOC's 25 basis point cut in October. It's not my war, declared Donald Trump during a press briefing after talks with Putin. He added that this war wouldn't have happened if he were the president at that time, and has claimed to have healthy talks with Russia in a bid to promote peace in the region. And he also aims to stop the conflict with Ukraine. After a 2-hour phone call, he said that the two sides have agreed to immediately start negotiations, maybe with the help of the Pope. Let's listen in what he had to say.
My little conversation with a nice gentleman named Vladimir Putin. But we had a good talk. And I think that progress is being made. 5,000 young soldiers are being killed every single week on average. Can you believe 5,000? And it's actually a number probably worse than that, in addition to other people that are being killed in towns. And we're trying to stop it. It's a bloodbath. It's an absolute bloodbath. I've seen satellite pictures that are so bad, so horrible, and it's to think that in this day and age, we're living with this horrible thing that's going on, and we're doing the best we can. This was not our war. This was not me. We're doing something from the last administration. How they allowed that to happen? It wouldn't have happened. It would have never happened. And you know, the Ukraine-Russia wouldn't have happened. But I'll tell you what else wouldn't have happened. October 7th would not have happened. This was a terrible thing. Also, a lot of bad things happened in the last 4 years.
Also, moving on to the domestic events, sources tell your channel that government has informed the Parliamentary Standing Committee on External Affairs that the initiative for cessation of military operations came from DGMO of Pakistan. Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri also rejected US President Donald Trump's claim that he negotiated a ceasefire between India and Pakistan, whereas India and Pakistan bilaterally arrived on an understanding to stop military action. Let's go across to my colleague Prakash Priyadarshi, who has got all the details.
The Foreign Secretary was summoned by the Parliamentary Standing Committee on External Affairs to get details about Operation Sindoor. Developments happening in the last few weeks and a future ahead. It's a very significant development coming in. Sources are suggesting that the Foreign Secretary has made it very clear that the Foreign Minister Jaishankar's statement was taken out of context. In fact, he informed Pakistan about Operation Sindoor after the first attack on May 7. Remember, Indian Armed Forces had launched attack at 9 locations in Pakistan and Pakistan-occupied Kashmir to target the terrorist establishment on May 7. And after that, Pakistan was informed about India's action. It is important to note that the Congress party, a leader of opposition, and some other opposition parties have raised concern, accused Jaishankar of alerting Pakistan in advance, which was outrightly rejected by Foreign Secretary. He made it very clear that Pakistan was informed about the action after the first attack on May 7. When it comes to boycott Turkey calls on social media and government's action, Foreign Secretary told the members that historically India's relation with Turkey and Pakistan have not been good, and the government is taking it as it is. When asked about Trump's role in ceasefire, Foreign Secretary has completely rejected any such claim. He said there was no third-party involvement. In fact, India and Pakistan was mutually agreed on stopping military action. there was mutual agreement between both the parties, and there was no indication of nuclear attack from Pakistan. So it was a very significant development, a very long meeting, lasted for 3 hours. In fact, Foreign Secretary has made a presentation, taken almost all the questions. However, citing national security reasons, he avoided questions pertaining to number of Indian aircraft shot down by Pakistan.
Prakash, stay on with us because moving on to next story, that sources tell ET now that government is reviewing fertilizer supply demand scenario in the country. The center is also likely to provide additional subsidy if prices continue to rise in the international market. Prakash, what is the update on this story?
The sources are suggesting that the government has reviewed fertilizer demand supply scenario in the country. We're given to understand that the fertilizer ministry has taken stock of the availability of NPK category fertilizer amid rising prices in the international market. DAP prices have increased by more than $100 per ton in the last 2 months, crossing $650 per ton, and that's a matter of concern for the government at this point of time. Discussions are underway, and sources are indicating that the government is likely to provide additional fertilizer subsidy if prices continue to rise in the international market. That will lead to higher fertilizer subsidy allocation for FY26, which is budgeted at 1.68 lakh crore so far. Discussions are underway at the official level, and sources are indicating that the fertilizer ministry may approach the finance ministry for a special financial provision to compensate fertilizer companies if there is shortfall in their margin. However, fertilizer ministry has asked the fertilizer companies to import sufficient fertilizer to maintain availability in the market. And good thing is that the farmers will continue to get fertilizer at affordable prices.
Thanks, Prakash, for all those details. Now, Ansh is standing by, who gives you FNO snapshot on a daily basis. Ansh, what are the cues today?
Right, so Nifty has been declining for second consecutive session. It has closed below that psychological mark of 25,000, indicating some cautious sign in the market. Also, if we talk about call options, then we are seeing very active call writing happening at that 25,200 strike, indicating strong resistance around that level. So option traders are expecting very strong selling at around that 25,200 mark. Now, if we talk about Nifty Bank, then Nifty Bank has been in a sideways tight range for sixth consecutive session, indicating a sideways trend here. In index future, we are seeing that open interest has gone up by around 1.5%, but it has been largely flat, so a neutral stance from index future point of view. Now, if we talk about index future for FII and retail, then for FII, they have added some long by around just 200 contract. They have added some shorts as well by around 470 contract, but net to net, they have been almost flat to around 42.3%, whereas retail traders, they have covered some long, but against that, they have added around 2,000 short contract, indicating their bearish stance in this market.
Oh, those details. Now, before the opening of market, which are the stocks which should be there on your radar? We have with us Gaurav to tell you which are the stocks to watch today morning.
Well, let's talk about Ola Electric, because this company is going to consider fundraising via NCDs on 22nd of May. Other than that, Ashok Leyland is also going to be in focus, because on 23rd of May, they are also going to have a meeting where they will consider bonus shares. Mahindra & Mahindra is also going to be in focus, because company has now said that they will be subscribing the rights issue completely of Mahindra Lifespace at the cost of around 257 rupees per share, which will help the company to raise around 1496 crore rupees. Other than that, company has also said that they will subscribe additional or unsubscribed share subject to legal compliance. Other than that, there are some stocks which will be in focus on the back of the earnings. So let's talk about BL, Redington, NLC, all of which reported very good set of numbers. In fact, when we talk about BL, EBITDA margins expanded almost by 400 basis points, while for NLC, EBITDA margins expanded almost by 500 basis points on a year-on-year basis. On the other hand, we have got Power Grid, Gujarat Gas, New India Assurance, all of these companies reported inline set of numbers. When we talk about Power Grid, although revenue increased only by 2.5%, net revenue remained flat on a YOY basis. Let's let's also talk about PI Industries and JK Paper, because here we saw profitability declining and a weak set of number, because in PI Industries profitability declined almost by 11% on a sequential basis, while on JK Papers profitability declined almost by 77% on a year-on-year basis. Other than that, some of the MNC stocks in the likes of ABB, Siemens are going to be in focus, and the reason being that as per agency, India is going to plan a stricter rules for companies with foreign ownerships. Lastly, let's also keep an eye out on the steel stocks in the likes of JSW Steel, Tata Steel, because China has now cut the benchmark lending rate for the first time in the last 7 months, which can actually be sentimentally positive for the entire steel pack. So definitely watching out on all these counters on the back of the news flow as well as the numbers that we have received today.
Thanks, Gaurav, for that detail. Now moving on, it's a time for news fatafat. Ahead of the delegation tour, Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri is all set to brief party delegation on key development, diplomatic outreach, India's strategy with an understanding of the current situation. Now this is happening after the briefing which happened on Parliamentary Standing Committee. Moving on, Bengaluru braces for another fresh spell of thunderstorm a day after torrential rains brought the capital to standstill. The rains turned deadly as the death toll climbed to 3, and incessant downpour triggered waterlogging, traffic chaos and civil alarm across the city. External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar arrived in Netherlands on Monday for high-level meeting with Dutch leadership. The visit aims to deepen strategic cooperation and boost bilateral ties across trade, technology and global issues. He is on his first leg of 3-nation tour. Later, he will be visiting Denmark and Germany. In another news, the Supreme Court is all set to hear the pleas challenging constitutional validity of the Waqf Act 2025. The hearing will focus on the limited point of granting interim relief to the petitioners, while CJI B.R. Gavai has indicated that the court will not permit challenges to the original Waqf Act within these petitions. This hearing is something to watch out for. Also, Chennai Super Kings is all set to clash with Rajasthan Royals in the IPL today at the Arun Jaitley Stadium in Delhi. Both teams are already out of the playoff race and now will be playing for the pride as they look at their campaigns on their positive note. With this, it's time for a wrap in this edition of Market Cafe. But if you want to know what to do before market opening, do watch The Market, which is coming up next.